Hello. Hello and welcome. All right, so here we are again reading another article from this time coming from the New Yorker. Our columnist, Joseph Stiglitz and the Meaning of Freedom. Stiglitz, by the way, the famous liberal economist wants to take back the language of liberty from the right. So it's the right that has been stealing the liberty. This is what Joseph Stiglitz is on about. And here we have a lovely picture of, yeah, in the early days of pandemic. I'm sorry, here we go. In the early days of 19 pandemic, when there was no vaccine in sight and more than 1,000 people who had contracted the virus were dying each day in the U.S., Joseph Stiglitz, the economics professor and Nobel laureate, like I'm supposed to know what that means, was isolating with his wife at home on the Upper West Side. Stiglitz, who is now 81, was a high-risk individual, and he followed the government's guidelines on making and social distancing scrupulously. Not everyone did, of course, and on the political right, there were complaints that the mask mandate, in particular, was an unjustified infringement on the individual freedom. Right? Stiglitz strongly disagreed. I thought it was very clear, that it was an example where one person's freedom is another's unfreedom. He told me recently. Wearing a mask was a very little infringement on one's personal freedom, and not wearing a mask was potentially a large infringement on others. I don't want to get into. We all know that the mask is it's so, no one even knows what it actually does. He's just Stiglitz here. It also struck Stiglitz, who had served as a chair of the White House Council of Economic Advisors during the Clinton administration. He was working as a White House Council of Economic Advisors during the Clinton administration. I might say that again. That the experience of the pandemic could provide an opportunity of a wide range examination of the question of freedom and unfreedom. He wants to redefine the term freedom. He wants to redefine what it means, which he had been thinking about from an economic perspective for many years. The result is a new book, The Road to Freedom, Economics and the Good Society. Ooh, good boy. In which he seeks to reclaim the concept of freedom for liberals and progressives. Freedom is an important value that we do and ought to cherish, but it is more complex, here running around circles, and more nuanced than the right's invocation, he writes. The current conservative reading of what freedom means is superficial, misguided, and ideologically motivated. He says, the right claims to be defender of freedom, but I'll show you the way to define the word. Okay, tell us, Mr. Glitzy Glamour, and pursue it to lead the opposite. Pursue it has led to the opposite result. Oh, really? Who's in power right now? Vastly reducing the freedoms of most citizens. Who's in power again? Stiglitz, Title is a play on the road to selfdom. Friedrich Hayek's famous Jeremiad Against Socialism, published in 1944. Okay, you're going to have to read that. I'm not reading that. In making his argument, Stiglitz takes the reader on a broad tour of economic thinking and recent economic history, which encompasses everyone from John Stuart Mill to Hayek, Milton Friedman, and the author of 62 book Capitalism and Freedom, which has long been a free market Bible, to Ronald Reagan and Donald Trump. The going can get a bit heavy when Stiglitz explains some tricky economic concepts. Oh, they're tricky, all right. They got tricks up their sleeve. But his essential argument comes across very clearly. Okay, can you explain it to me very clearly now? It is encapsulated in a quote from Isaiah Berlin, the late Oxford philosopher, which he cites in his first page and returns to repeatedly. Freedom for the wolves has often meant death to the sheep. Oh, here we go. Stiglitz begins not with pandemic-era mask mandates, but with the American plague of gun violence. So here we're talking about what is freedom, and then now we're going to jump right into gun violence. This does not surprise me at all. He notes that there is a simple reason why the United States has far more gun deaths than other countries do. Is that a real thing? Is that a real stat? I don't know. It has far more guns, and thanks to the tendentious reading of Terentius reading of the Second Amendment by the courts, including the Supreme Court, many Americans now regard owning a gun or even a closet full of semi-automatic rifles as a constitutional protected right. It is. The rights of one group, gun owners, are placed above what most others would view as a more fundamental right, the right to live. Stiglitz writes, to rephrase Isaiah Berlin's quote, freedom for gun owners has often meant death to school children and adults killed in mass shootings. Hey man, look. You have a car, right? You don't go running around people with your car. You got a lot of dangerous stuff in your house. You have not. I'm not giving you any ideas, but there's a lot of dangerous things that we come into contact on a daily basis. I'm not gonna argue for this. I'm not arguing. You know what? I'm not even gonna tell you my position. Here we go. I'm just gonna keep reading this. Oh no. They want me to sign up to the New Yorker. Oh no. Oh, we've been had. Oh, we're done. We're done. I'm not reading this anymore. Wait, you know what? Here we go. No, we're going to keep reading. Gun violence and the spread of diseases by people who refuse to abide by health guidelines are example of what he's comparing us to disease-ridden, just third world country folk. Anyway, are examples of what economists call externalities. An awkward word, of course it's awkward, because that's what they want to do, that is derived from the fact that certain actions, such as refusing to wear a mask, hey man, if I don't want to wear a mask, leave me alone, or market transactions, such as the sale of a gun, oh hey man, you know how hard it is to get a gun, especially in California, can have a negative or positive consequences to outside the world. Externalities are everywhere, Stiglitz writes. The biggest and most famous negative externalities are air pollution and climate change, which derive from freedom of businesses and individuals to take actions that create harmful emissions. The argument for restricting this freedom, Stiglitz points out, is that doing so will expand the freedom of people in later generations to exist on a livable planet without having to spend a huge amount of money to adapt to massive changes and sea levels. Oh my god, the fear-mongering has gone out of control. In all these cases, Stiglitz argues restrictions on behavior are justified by the overall increase in human welfare. I'm gonna just pause for a second, let you digest that. And freedom that they produce. In the language of cost-benefit analysis, the costs in terms of infringing on individual freedom of action are much smaller than the societal benefits. So the net benefits are positive, again running around in circles. Of course, many gun owners and anti-maskers would argue that this isn't true, pointing to gun violence figures and to scientific studies showing that about gun violence and wearing your mask, showing the showing that masking and social distancing did make a difference to COVID transmission rates. Stiglitz gives such arguments short shrift, that he insists that the real source of the dispute is a difference in values. Oh, you goddamn right. Are these people responsible? Excuse me. Are there responsible people who really believe that the right to not be inconvenienced by wearing a mask is more important than the right to be alive? He asks. Oh man, the gaslighting. In 2002, 5 years after he left the White House, Stiglitz published Globalization and Its Discontents, which was highly critical of the International Monetary Fund, a multilateral lending agency based in Washington. The book's success and the Nobel turned him into a public figure. Over the years, he followed it up with further titles on the global financial crisis, inequality, the cost of the war in Iraq, and other subjects. As a vocal member of the progressive wing of the Democratic Party, Stiglitz has expressed support for tighter financial regulations, international debt relief, the Green New Deal, and hefty taxes on very high incomes and large agglomerations of wealth. This man. During our sit-down interview, Stiglitz told me for a long time he had caviled at the negative conception of freedom used by conservative economists and politicians, which referred primarily to the ability to escape taxation, regulation, and other forms of government compulsion. As an economist accustomed to thinking in theoretical terms, Stiglitz conceived of freedom as expanding opportunity sets, the range of options that people can choose from, which are usually bounded in the final analysis by individuals' incomes. Once you reframe freedom in this more positive sense, anything that reduces a person's range of choices, such as poverty, joblessness, or illness, is a grave restriction on liberty. So if you don't want to work, yeah. Conversely, policies that expand people's opportunity to make choices, such as income support payments, subsidize for worker training or higher education, enhance freedom. Adopting this framework in The Road to Freedom, Stiglitz reserves his harshest criticisms for the free market economists, conservative politicians, and businesses lobbying groups who, over the past couple of generations, have used arguments about expanding freedom to promote policies that have benefited rich and powerful interests at the expense of society at large. These policies included giving tax cuts to wealthy individuals and big corporations, cutting social programs, starving public projects of investment, and liberating industrial and financial corporations from regulatory oversight. All right, I'm done reading all this. You can read the rest of this if you want. I'm gonna, here we are. This is it right here. Joseph Stiglitz. You might want to do a little bit of research on him. You got to know where his well, I mean, it says right here, he's a leftist. He's a liberal. Yeah, okay, we're out.